welcome to SHFM's Conversations That Matter series. I'm Rob Gordon, and I'm SHFM's current president. On behalf of SHFM and the SHFM Diversity Council, we welcome you to our second installment of Conversations That Matter, Advancing Cultural Intelligence Within Our Industry. As everyone is still joining the session, I do want to do a couple of quick mentions on housekeeping items. So we please ask questions along the way, and during the Q&A portion of the session in the Q&A window, you'll find the toolbar. If you wish to remain anonymous when asking your question, please select the anonymous button before you submit the question. And lastly, this session is being recorded, so it can be played back on demand. It will be available tomorrow on SHFM's website and YouTube channel. And for those of you who don't and haven't been able to get it, please tell all of your team members that this is a great opportunity to see an exceptional discussion. So for today's SHFM educational programming, it was developed by the Diversity Council. And I'd like to give a special thank you to the Council and the planning team for this series and this session. The series is designed to provide critical context on timely issues, including diversity and inclusion topics, to encourage frank, solution-focused dialogue. As we continue to see struggles going on in our nation, our best opportunity to make a difference is to be part of changing the narrative. Change by dictionary definition is to make different in some particular way, to make radically different, and to give a different position, course, or direction. In order for change to occur, we must be agents and willing participants. Most of you know me, know I love quotes. And from one of the great civil rights leaders of our generation, John Lewis, he said, "You must be bold, brave, and courageous, and find a way to get in the way." Today's session is designed to help by giving you the tools to help become that change agent that is so direly needed. In preparation with this fantastic group, I learned a new term, cultural intelligence. I hope that you have similar takeaways as I did as I learned more. With that, we are pleased to be joined by a group of diversity and inclusion champions who will share how they and their organizations are addressing the profound impact of the recent civic unrest and the anti-racism movement in America. I'm delighted to introduce our session moderator, Gerry Fernandez, as president and founder of the Multicultural Foodservice and Hospitality Alliance, an educational nonprofit organization that makes the business case for developing cultural intelligence in the workplace. Gerry has been recognized over the years for his work in educating members on and advocating for and connecting people to the business benefits of diversity and inclusion in the restaurant, food service, and lodging industry. Today, Gerry's going to lead us in an engaging discussion on how you can be part of the change with empathy, with purpose, and again, with bold action. Gerry, thank you so much for being with us today and taking time out to spend it with the SHFM family. Over to you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Bob. I really appreciate you inviting us, and thank you to all of SHFM members for participating. I'm excited about being a moderator today. We have three great panelists. Dr. Monroe France from New York University. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about himself. Rodney Ruffin, who's with Thompson Hospitality, who I've known for a very long time. And of course, the great Merary Simeon, who's with us from PepsiCo. So before we get started, I thought we should talk a little bit about what cultural intelligence is. So I have a couple slides in a real short video. So cultural intelligence is defined on the right by the Cultural Intelligence Center, those PhD folks, as the capability to relate and work effectively in culturally diverse situations. Now, his concept of cultural intelligence has been validated in 98 countries around the world, and all the academics have solidly supported the concept of cultural intelligence, or what we call CQ. On the left side is MFHA's approach to it. It's about knowledge, skills, and ability for the people who are running and operating food service establishments, whether it's restaurants, on-campus dining, hotels. It's all about what happens at the front line. How do you build their CQ? In the next slide, we find out exactly what the benefits are of having high levels of CQ, or cultural intelligence. Gallup tells us if you have engaged employees, these are the outcomes. Well, we're here to tell you, if you understand the cultural identity of the people you're working with, and you understand who they are and how they are, they're going to be way more engaged, and that goes straight to the bottom line. In my last slide, before we see the video, we developed an engagement model with SMU, Southern Methodist University. Dr. Dixon, who's a great friend of ours, worked with us on building a cultural intelligence initiative for SMU. And in the process, we found out from talking to students, and faculty that there were 5 things that students wanted faculty to know about them. And guess what? Same thing that we find out in operations, what employees want you to know about them. Where I come from, who I am, and how you can call me, how I identify. Secondly, how I see the world. I see them through different glasses than you, and how that impacts the way I experience the work environment. My communication style. Some cultures, very direct. Other cultures, not so, indirect. They don't say exactly what they mean. I want you to know about the myths and realities of my cultural group. Don't put me in a stereotype or put me in a box. And last, what things offend me? What things are automatically going to shut down the conversation? These are very important things if you want to engage with your workforce, your customers, your supply partners, the communities, the college campuses. I don't care where you operate. This is the engagement model that works in today's environment. So before we get started, let's watch a little bit of a humorous video, and then we'll move right into the panel. Let's roll the video.
Hi there.
Hi.
Nice day, huh?
Yeah, finally, right?
Where are you from? Your English is perfect.
San Diego. We speak English there.
Oh, no. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Orange County, but I never actually lived there.
I mean before that.
Before I was born.
Yeah, like, well, where are your people from?
Well, my great-grandma was from Seoul.
Korean. I knew it. I was like, she's either Japanese or Korean, but I was leaning more towards Korean.
Amazing.
Hamshasina. There's a really good teriyaki barbecue place near my apartment. So I actually really like kimchi.
Cool. What about you? Where are you from?
San Francisco.
But where are you from?
Oh, I'm just American.
Really? You're Native American?
No, just regular American. Oh, well, I guess my grandparents are from England.
Oh, well. Hello, Governor! What's all this then? Top of the morning to you. Let's go sporty! Double, toil and trouble! Mind the gap! Beware, Jack the Ripper! Bloody hell! Pip, cheerio! I think your people's fish and chips are amazing.
You're weird.
Really? I'm weird? Must be a Korean thing.
I love that. I love Ken Tanaka has a whole series on him. It shows sometimes how foolish we can look when we don't have the basics around cultural intelligence. So let's get started and find a way to get in the way, to quote the great John Lewis. I'm going to ask the panelists to quickly introduce themselves, tell us who they are, what they do, how long they've been with the company, kind of, what motivates them to do this, and then we'll jump right into some of the questions. So Merary, you look so great there in the top left-hand corner of my screen, with PepsiCo shining brightly behind you. Let's start with you, Merary.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to shed light into advancing cultural intelligence. My name is Merary Simeon. I'm the Vice President for Diversity and Engagement for PepsiCo North America, and I'm proud to be with PepsiCo for 16 years now. And most important, because at PepsiCo, we're proud to embrace the full spectrum of humanity, and that includes building a more diverse and inclusive workforce while impacting our communities. But the reason I like this topic is because today, more than ever, it is critical for leaders to be agile when it comes to cultural intelligence. Because when our leaders are agile, it empowers them to serve our communities and acknowledge someone's identity. I am looking forward to our conversation today.
Excellent, excellent. How about we go counterclockwise? And Rodney, with your great appearance here today, you get to go second.
Thank you very much, Gerry. My name is Rodney Ruffin. I'm Vice President of Business Development at Thompson Hospitality. Thompson Hospitality is a minority-owned company. We're about to be 28 years old. And for 23 of those years, we've been partnered with Compass Group in a strategic partnership. So we provide food service and facilities management service to a number of companies and educational institutions and hospitals. I am honored to be on this panel with such a diverse group of experts, and I'm very, very grateful to SHFM for having this series. We need now more than ever to have this dialogue and this discussion. I don't know that I qualify as an expert. I think I'm going to learn more than I will bring to this panel, but I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful for the guests who are listening, who are experts in this arena as well. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Dr. France, you're up next.
So please, just Monroe. Hi, everyone. Monroe France, and I work at New York University, maybe a small institution that some people maybe have heard about before. And I'm the Associate Vice President for Global Engagement and Inclusive Leadership within our Office of Global Inclusion, Diversity, and Strategic Innovation. So just like any good academic space, we love our long titles, and so there you go. And so in my work, I'm responsible for working with our incredible team to advance diversity and inclusion, and also this piece around innovation. How does diversity lead to greater innovation across all of the United States and also globally? And I get to not only work with our students, staff, faculty, and alumni communities, but also with our external partners in how do we impact change. And this conversation around cultural intelligence is so important to me as well, because I think learning is where we should be in terms of doing this work. And our populations have changed, our customers have changed, the people that we serve, and our world is shifting. And so the only way to do that better is by raising our intelligence level. And so around culture, around our emotions, and also just, being smart. And so part of being smart is being more culturally attuned into who the people are in our society. And so I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Good. That's a nice setup. I want to ask each of you, how are you feeling? How are you feeling about what's going on right now? You don't have to tell me the whole story, but just give me a sense of how you're feeling. Merary, how are you feeling as we've been through this just traumatic last few months?
Thank you for the question and for asking. It's exhausting, not just because of being a Latina, but also just leading diversity. It's heartbreaking when you hear the stories from our community, for our own employees. And, I could tell you some days I'm the hyper happy Merary that you see here, and some days it's really tough. I'll cry, before I start having some conversations or after. So it's definitely an emotional roller coaster. And I think people need to know that it's okay to spend a moment taking care of yourself, because thank you for the question, but it's definitely an emotional one, because it is a roller coaster every day with everything that's going on in society.
Well, that's good. I appreciate your honesty there, because people should know how you feel. How about you, Monroe? How are you feeling? How are you feeling with all this? You're in the epicenter, New York. How are you feeling?
Yeah. I'm feeling fired up. I'm feeling that more than now ever, we need to have change, right? We need to see people take action. I think we need to move out of the space of rhetoric and saying that, Black Lives Matter. I already know Black Lives Matter. But more important to me is what are we going to do? How are we, if we're committed to this and we say that it's a value of ours and that we care about our humanity, then we must do the work of addressing racism and other forms of marginalization and disenfranchisement. So I'm trying to stay hopeful. Some days, as Merary was saying, it's really hard. And so right now it's so critical to have people that you can go to and say, hey, this is a hard day. I need to have a community care and be lifted up in this moment. And other days you do that for other people. And so I think more than now than ever, we need these community of care spaces where we have these types of conversations. I think are so critical. So I'm both fired up, I am hopeful, and I'm tired. This work gets tiring, so the extra burden of representation that even doing this work, but when you're a part of the Black and Indigenous and people of color communities, this is an extra layer of just responsibility that you feel, but I gotta stay in it. I keep reminding, stay in it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. People don't recognize that people doing this work are carrying an extra baggage. It's hard. People have high expectations of you. And so to all those senior leaders and CEOs, support your D&I people. give them the money, give them the backup, give them time, give them grace. This is hard work. How about you, Rodney? You're there with a minority business or enterprise. You know, are things any different for you over there as an advocate for this?
Sure. Thank you for asking. I'm tired too. I am tired from carrying the burden. I'm tired of carrying this big quarantine afro, if you saw that picture in the early one. I'm tired, seriously, of the pain and the hurt that we've all witnessed. First, from a horrible pandemic, right? That isolates us, that keeps us inside, that keeps us from seeing each other's faces, that keeps us from hugging each other and kissing one another. And then I'm tired by all of what we see. I don't even know what to call it, right? Civil unrest doesn't do it justice. I don't want to use a person's name because there have been so many victims. How far back do I go? So I am tired, but I'm also, when I say I'm tired, I hear a voice in my head. I hear my grandmother saying, boy, you don't get to be tired.
Yeah.
You haven't gone through what we went through. You got it much easier than we had it. And so I listen to her voice. She's gone now, but she still speaks to me regularly. And when I hear and see a John Lewis, I realize that I don't have the luxury of being tired. And or if I feel tired, I need to get up, dust myself off, and get right back out there at it.
Good.
So I feel energized more than anything.
That's good. I refuse to use the word exhausted, because I think back to the people who picked cotton and did all these things, and whether they came here, however, it's so much harder than those of us in corporate America who've lived so long and had such a good quality of life. So anyway, let's move into how has your company responded to the George Floyd killing and the recent killings, Rashad Brooks, et cetera. Merary, I'm going to come back to you because you're a big company. PepsiCo's got a long history of being involved in communities of color and proactively, not with a gun to your head, because you saw the opportunity. How's PepsiCo handled that? How you've approached it?
Yes, and you said it. While PepsiCo has been doing the work in the communities and even at work in the business for our employees and our Black communities, we still saw it as an opportunity to speak to our employees first. So let me explain that a little bit. Immediately after the George Floyd shooting, our CEO and our leaders met with our Black internal community. Number one, to check on them and see how they were doing. But number two, to see what can we do. And the commitment that PepsiCo made to the Black Lives Matter was informed by our own employees. So this is something that, number one, makes me proud to work for PepsiCo, but also it shows we didn't just start doing this work yesterday. And as you saw, the commitment for over $400 million is not just a check, because any big company like PepsiCo can write a check. But we truly engage our employees. We looked at what can we do internally, right? And that includes adding executives, because we know that's an opportunity. While we've been doing this for a long time, we realized we need more Black executives in order for things to change in our company as well and in our communities. This also included the business, right? We are helping businesses and leveraging the power of PepsiCo and our size to scale and influence to help not just with marketing agencies, but to bring the Black voice internally and externally to our community. And then obviously everything that we're doing in the community. But there's a lot that we're doing. I could talk for hours about it, but the main thing that I wanted people to understand is we engaged our Black community first.
Yeah.
And that is critical.
Yeah, that's noteworthy. Frequently we have to tell people, have you talked to your people? Well, we didn't really think about that. So that's exactly one of the big takeaways from this. How about you, Monroe? How did NYU approach this, the George Floyd killing, et cetera?
Sure, yeah. So first I want to say justice for Breonna Taylor. We still need it. So first name that, right? And also just a reminder, this is a long legacy of like the ways in which that Black bodies have been treated, that blackness, the anti-blackness, and so there's a particular way we need to think about this as well, in addition to racism. So just to name all of that, and so for us at NYU, we've leveraged, who we are as an institution. So we are an academic institution that's rooted in research, a Research One institution. So we've provided, lots of anti-racism resources. If you go to our website, they're also open to the public. Readings, videos. We've done a host of responsive programs that is led by our Office of Global Inclusion, which I'm a part of. We've, again, as Merary said, we've created spaces for our Black faculty, staff, and students to come together, to be in dialogue, to get support. And part of that support is creating structural resources so that they don't have to do all the education, right? So that, when people say, what can I do? You can Google NYU anti-racism resource list and do the work, right? And so that we're not only having to experience what it feels like to live in this moment, but also then, to do that further work of educating, especially when that's not your role. So we've created resources so people can do their ongoing learning, get the tools they need to make difference from their sphere of influence, and just consistently reminding people, now is the time to take action. Yes, read, but read for what end result? Action. And so we've also added resources to advance our, our anti-racism work across NYU, and as well, in terms of additional resources from the most senior, our president, our board of trustees, and how we've created more resources. But my thinking too is that it can't stop here, right? And so we need both in the moment plan, but what's the long strategic plan? Because we know this, racism is not going away. Anti-blackness is not going away anytime soon. So we need to stay at this work, and we need to have both a short-term and long-term plan. So that's a part of the work we're doing in my office as well.
That's really good. I had a former Black CEO from the restaurant industry, Steve Davis, who was with Bob Evans, said, it's not what you do in 6 months, it's what you'll be doing in 6 years. So Rodney, tell us what you've been doing at Thompson Hospitality and Compass, since the Breonna Taylor and George Floyd killings.
I want to return to an earlier session a couple of weeks ago with Gerry Mason Hall. She said something that really stuck with me. Gerry's a former boss of mine. I have tremendous regard and admiration for her. She's got all of her marbles and half of somebody else's. And she said something that really stuck with me. It was, we all have biases. We all have a lack of cultural intelligence. And why do I bring that up? I think there's a tendency to say, okay, well, there's a minority-owned company, they've got it together. They don't have problems, they don't have a need for cultural intelligence. Look, we run restaurants. We serve people on the front line every day. We also do contract food service. Yep. We have to make sure that our house is in order as well, and we recognize that. So one of the first things we do is sit down and take a look at who and where we are around this whole cultural intelligence thing. So, and what kinds of teachable moments have we learned that we need to make sure that our own house is in order? Because I think there's a tendency sometimes to say that this group, because of its makeup, doesn't have a problem around lack of cultural intelligence or around racism or around sexism or around gender bias. So we've done an awful lot of internal soul searching. Now, we found it necessary and important to make statements or a corporate statement around the George Floyd killing and around Juneteenth, the sad side and the happy side, if you will. So I think it's been about recognizing that we, as a large company, minority owned or not, we have some 6,000 associates, we have to recognize our own possible shortcomings around this area and do the same kind of learning, hopefully some teaching, and some introspection around what cultural intelligence means. So there have been a number of conversations with senior staff, but also with, line level staff about what that means, and conversations with our partner, which I found really gratifying and enlightening.
So that's good. We have to kind of make sure our own house is in order before we start looking at other folks. And I want to remind people to share your questions in the chat box. I got a couple already. Panel one, I'm going to ask you right now. I've got some more questions, but I'll come back to as many of the ones in the chat as we can. This is the time to ask your questions. You rarely have people with this much perspective, insight, and might I say honesty and frankness. And this is what you need to do. Hear it from the experts. So any of you can take this one. Thinking about your engagement model, how can corporations use it for broader communication, both internally and externally? So I'll say it again. Thinking about your engagement model, how you engage, how can corporations use it for broader communication, both internal and external? So what are you doing around internal and external communications? Who wants to go first? Monroe, you have your hand up?
Sure. I didn't really, but I'm really always willing to go. So, I mean, I think you have to have a plan, right? What's your plan for both? Like, how do you look at the internal issues and also the external? I think that's so critical, right? And so what I think is take a pulse. You need to assess what are the needs or the issues that are most pernicious, like within internal. And then also then external, what are the ways in which that people see your organization or your corporation? And so how do you need to then further educate if it's a part of, how do you need to show up for things that matter? And how do your actions need to align with what you say your values are? And especially in this moment, I'm gonna keep probably saying this and keep coming back to this because that's my main walkaway message is that what are you doing to take action? And so I think a part of it is how is it informed? How are you bringing people together internally so you learn as an organization, as a corporation? What are you doing in terms of how do you create space for external feedback, right? So these feedback loops, because sometimes we're so rooted in our own work and who we are as a corporation or as a brand or as an entity that we can't see ourselves. And so we need to have those disruptions where people are disrupting who we think we are, both within our own, especially at the lowest level of the organization, because that's often where we can really see who we are. And also then as we think about our external people and think about people who are least likely to speak up, and how do you reach those people? Yeah. Right? And I think that's where you learn so much.
It's just a quick follow on. Do you have an example of something you've done externally that this audience who maybe not isn't as far down the road on their DEI journey as you, what have you done something external that would be something that they could relate to?
Right. I mean, I think one is that you create mechanisms for feedback, like for written feedback, so we've done that where people are able to give us feedback, and then partnerships. And so we have lots of strategic partnerships with different entities like corporations. We have partnerships with community-based organizations. We have partnerships with activists. And so bringing them in for conversations that are maybe not give us your feedback, but by working with them, you learn, right? About who you are, what's different. Yeah.
That's good. Just being learned right alongside. Merary or Rodney, you want to add to that? Yeah. What are you doing internally, externally?
Sure, if I may. So there are two big things. One is what we call the racial equality journey internally. And one of the things that we've done is we created a team of, in this particular case, let's talk about the Black Lives Matter movement. We created a team of our Black employees, both executive and at different levels in the organization. And they are, it's kind of like a task force. They are leading and helping us shape this both internally and externally. So the commitment is there. Our employees are engaged. They're the ones along with us communicating internally to the organization. Good. In addition, we also do what we call courageous conversations, where we are asking, similar to this, the tough questions to our executives or even our employees of color. On the external piece, some of the things that we're doing is not only are we partnering with community leaders, but we're also having conversations with the community leaders to give us feedback. And they're not just sitting with me, they're sitting with the CEO. They're sitting with our leaders in the organization to give us the feedback. This is where you're doing well, this is where you're not. Obviously, in addition to what we believe are our internal employees who are currently living in day-to-day in these situations. That's just a few examples.
I think it's so impressive that your CEO is involved. We know for diversity and inclusion efforts, the CEO has to be involved. So if you don't see the CEO, you know they're not serious. But CEOs can't do everything, so it's hard for them to pick and choose. Rodney, anything you want to add to that before I go to my next question?
Just one brief thing, and I could talk about it all day. I won't, I promise. I'm passionate about supplier diversity, so I guess that's more external than internal. But I've spent the largest part of my career in supplier diversity on one side or another, as either supplier diversity director or somebody who sells the value proposition of supplier diversity. There is simply no better way to transform a community than to inject much needed capital into that community's small and minority and women-owned and LGBTQ business community. A lot of data out there about the number of times that a dollar spent with one of those businesses circulates through that community. So obviously, as a minority-owned company, that's part of what I sell, right? Do business with Thompson Hospitality. But it's got to go beyond that. It's not just doing business with Thompson Hospitality. We then have a responsibility to bring in other vendors as subcontractors or whatever. I don't care whether you call it tier 2 or tier 1 or, you know, a blue-haired giraffe. Spend dollars with those, implement programs that will spend dollars in those communities and transform them. And I think that's a huge way. It's less a communication, it's more of an action. But
Yeah.
it's that old saying about what you're doing speaks so loud I can't hear what you're saying. If you do that, then it'll have that impact.
All right, Rodney, I'm gonna push back because you know these people don't want to do this. It's hard. I mean, I'm trying to get less suppliers. You add more. I want the big suppliers, the cars. What are the little guys? Why the hell I want to do this? That's what you're hearing, right?
Right. And a couple things.
How are we gonna break through that? Because the people are talking right and walking left. They talk about it, but not doing anything.
Well, it's easier and simpler to find one vendor that's going to do it for you, right? But you'd be surprised. There are a lot of myths out there around supplier diversity. I don't want to turn this into a supplier diversity panel because it's about cultural intelligence, but those small vendors are nimble. They can turn on a dime. They're creative. They're smart. They can do an awful lot for you to augment your existing supply chain. And this myth that it costs you more is exactly that. It's a myth. And so the companies who get it, if I go back to your cultural intelligence slide at the beginning, right? You showed all the benefits of cultural intelligence. Turn that slide on its head. There are costs of not doing the cultural intelligence piece.
Good point.
And one of those costs is not being open enough to working with various suppliers who are going to help you diversify your supply chain and provide value.
Yeah. And I think today, particularly with the younger generation, Gen Z, millennials, they are holding their companies accountable. We've dealt, since the pandemic, 52 new companies were dealing with MFHA. We are hearing consistently that these young people are saying, I want to know where my company stands. Are they a supporter of Black Lives Matter or what have you? And if you don't, I'm out. And so I think this supply diversity piece is a real opportunity, and it is tied to cultural intelligence. Cultural intelligence, you can build your cultural IQ everywhere you go. If you understand the value and the importance of what small, even not so small minority businesses mean in the communities of color, you know, how much they connect to the people in the community, it makes a huge difference. So let me-
And Gerry, if I could just add, because it is so important to hear from the community, and I echo exactly what Rodney said, because our Black employees informed us of our commitment. PepsiCo is committing over $200 million to, you know, in the supplier diversity space. So I just wanted to echo how critical that is, because it is true. It's the fastest way, the best way to put money back in our communities if we're really serious about it. So thank you.
No, I think both of you added some really important elements to that. Let's talk about, how do you build cultural intelligence within an organization? Some of these people have heard it. We heard Bob say the first time, it's a new term for him. How do we build it? What do you do to get started? If someone started, how do you advance it? Monroe, let's start with you.
So one of the things we have it in YU, which we started in my office, that I actually am the primary instructor for, is something called the Global Inclusive Leadership and Management Institute. And it's part of like the framework that we use is centered around the 6 C's that came out of Deloitte's work, right? So you're thinking about the 6 C's in inclusive leadership. And one of them is cultural intelligence, in addition to courage and all of that. And so, and I saw a question that came up about mid-managers, and our primary focus has been our mid-managers, because we know that, you know, those on top, right, you know, they know sort of what the vision and the values are, and they get it usually. Those at the bottom, like, you know, they're like, you know, helping to run the day-to-day show sometimes, but it's really the middle people where things can either not get put up, like, you know, sent up the ranks, or at the bottom not articulated well and people who can understand it. So the focus has been around mid-level managers. What do you need to shift the way in which that you lead? That's rooted in like greater inclusion, that's rooted in greater cultural intelligence, and then you have to have a plan. And so the part of walking away from this 3-part series is, what is your plan to impact change? How are you further growing your cultural intelligence? Because there's nothing that you can get out of a 3-part series even a year long, even a freaking thesis or a dissertation, that where you stop. And so what is your plan for greater learning, but also what action steps are you planning to take? And as a way, we've also normed language, normed practice, and also help people to be more thoughtful about the ways in which that you're managing your teams and the ways that you're leading, that's rooted around sort of this being curious, being learners, and also thinking about the ways in which you're impacting those most marginalized. And so it is rooted in theory, it's rooted in scholarship and research, and it's very focused on outcomes and application. And so that's one thing we're doing as that can have many different different parts of our organization, which is really intentional, that's gone through the program. And so that we really see a cross section of how the work is like commitment is demonstrated and how the outcomes are directed.
Yeah, so I think that was a really important question about mid-managers. It's kind of like a lot of things, you know, we know when we go to the doctor, they tell us you gotta change your diet. Your head, you get it. Your feet might take a few steps away from the dinner table, but it's that middle that we just can't seem to, you know, stop eating the food or taking different approaches to it. So mid-manager is really what. Merary, how are you doing at PepsiCo? How are you advancing cultural intelligence within the organization?
Yes, no, thank you for the question. So there's two things that we're doing. And one, when all this civil unrest broke out, one of the things that we did is we did a training called Leading with Inclusivity, the Black Experience. And what we did is we had our Black employees who work in, whether it's in diversity or support one of our employee resource groups, work with us or partner with us to give this training to all of our managers, to your point, from, you know, mid to senior level, and really talk about the Black experience. Because I think that is where you build the cultural intelligence. And this is something that I always preach. Just because I lead diversity and engagement doesn't mean I know the Black experience.
Right, exactly.
So it was critical for us to make sure that our community heard from our Black leaders. So that's one. The second thing that we did, and Rodney, you
went on mute by accident.
Sorry. One of the things that we did, it's my hand movement. That's that Latina in me. I'm sorry.
We all get that. Italian, everybody got it.
I know. One of the things we did is now we partner with a diverse supplier to bring to us Leading with Inclusivity training for all of the company.
Oh, that is very
good. So that is now something that is going to be required. So we addressed it by Leading with Inclusivity, what the Black experience is like, and now we're doing it again with Leading with Inclusivity for all of our employees in PepsiCo. Yeah. And then the third thing that I would add is that we're currently doing, we also partner with another smaller, diverse supplier who is doing a great job at what we're calling BOLD, is Breakthrough Organizational Leadership Development for Black and Brown employees. And it's a mastermind framework of coaching and developing them how to work in the corporate environment. The cultural intelligence piece comes in. This supplier is also providing us an opportunity. They will work with their managers, with the Black and Brown managers, and partner with us so that their managers understand, number one, what's their accountability, and understand too, where our employees are coming from. So we're really proud about those three things that we're doing with the company right now.
That partnering with diverse suppliers, Rodney, really connects to what you're doing. Do you want to add anything to what we heard from Monroe and Merary in terms of what do you do to advance cultural intelligence within your organization, your leadership team?
I do two brief things. One is you got to continue. We have, and we all, I think, have to continue having conversations. It's not going to surprise anybody who's listened to this panel to know that I'm a talker and that I believe in the value of conversation. And I know in this time you hear people say, okay, we've talked enough. I don't think you can talk enough. I think every situation, every horrible death, every moment is a teachable kind of moment. And I think you have to continue to have formal conversations like the one that this is part of, and like the one that we had a couple of weeks ago. Nothing more powerful than to hear a young woman say, the way I was treated by those police officers hit me harder than the news that I had cancer. I mean, you know, I think there wasn't, I mean, think about how that drove it home. So you can't have too many conversations, formal, informal, etc. The second piece is we have to recognize that it's everybody's job, not just the people with DE&I after their title. It's all of our responsibility. And I'm very guilty of this. My job, my primary job title is VP of Business Development. I'm supposed to sell. I've got a sales target. I've got a quota I've got to go out there and get every year. And so I find myself, or hear myself saying sometimes, well, I've got my day job, but I need to find time for this. No, DE&I is your day job, because you can't, you know, we spend a lot of time thinking about making the food good. No matter how good that food is, if it's not served with cultural intelligence, it's not going to taste good, right? No omelet can be fluffy enough if it's served with a heaping helping of bias, prejudice. And so we've got to recognize that DE&I is the job for each of us in these roles, irrespective of our job title. Now, are there experts like Merary? Of course, and Monroe? Of course there are. And we take guidance from them. But it's not Merary's or Monroe's exclusive province. It's all of our jobs. And I think we've got to recognize that to make it right, to make it work.
There's two things
I was going to say that if the omelet is not done with cultural intelligence, it's quite bland. So that's another reason why we need.
Well, I was going to say that's good preaching, chef. You really got the food piece going on, but so serving food with a large helping of cultural intelligence, cultural competency, cultural fluency, cultural dexterity, no matter what you call it, it's having the ability to effortlessly flow between cultural groups, Black, brown, Asian, biracial, disability, military, inclusive, exclusive, you know, indigenous people. And that takes work. It's not easy. You have to learn it. I learned all this stuff through the work, but you talked about from Jerry Mason Hall's previous session, the young woman was on this, for those of you who didn't listen to the first session, African-American, and she talked about how she's just walking back from doing her thing. And she got arrested by the police in New York as being part of this protest, and they treated her in the way that we've seen people get treated badly. And it was traumatic for her to tell that story. It was hugely powerful. So to your point of we can't get tired of these stories. And already we hear some of our friends go, can we just turn the page? We're ready to move on. I don't want to keep hearing all that story. Well, I don't want to keep dying. I have two Black sons and a Black grandson who's in that room across from me. And I worry about them. So I think you're right, we can't. And the other thing that you said, it is everyone's job, not just the Black people or the brown people or the Asian people. It's our white brothers and sisters throughout the history in this country of all the benefits and the advancements that Black Americans have made. White men and women of goodwill have always been there with us. And so we've got to have you can't leave it to someone else to do. So I think that's a really important one. Before I go to another question here, somebody asked, you know, how do I take charge and helping facilitate this conversation within my company? How does somebody show that courage, that ability to stand up when you're going to be swimming against the stream of conversation or whatever, or you're one of a few Latinas in the company? How do you swim upstream? What recommendations, what advice do you have for anyone who's trying to push this rock up a hill like many of us have been doing for a long time? Ladies first?
Sure, thank you. I'll start. The first thing that I would recommend is find other allies, find other people in the organization that will stand with you, and find that leader that will listen to you or that you respect and have a relationship with. I think a lot of the times we try to go all the way to, hey, this is the person that can make the difference, or maybe all the way to the top, and that may not be it. You need the people around you to support you and start there. Now, if you have that, then go right ahead and go straight to the top. Unfortunately, not in every case. I mean, let's just be real, not in every case that is okay to do. So I would start with get your allies and move on from there.
Monroe, you have anything you want to, all that work you've done at NYU, I can't wait to go to the site to see that.
Yes, please do. I mean, similar to what Merary just said, I think the collaboration piece is so critical. And sometimes what you do is that you begin to nest it and you start with maybe more grassroots because you may not know who all your allies are. And so you're like, I'm gonna have a lunch, like some people want a lunch and just talk about this article, this book, and you begin to build momentum. And so I think that you can't see it as, I'm just gonna wake up today and everyone's gonna be aboard, but you may have to be really strategic. So you have to really think, how do I begin to seed this? How then do I get buy-in, from different perspectives and places? And then also who has to, once you have that buy-in, who has the greatest sphere of influence? Again, Merary said, that is already a part that then can maybe leverage the next level. Right. And so you begin to really think that way. So just like anything else, it has to be a strategy. I know we want everyone just to do it because it's the right thing to do. But the problem with that, if it's not rooted in a plan or a strategy, is that you're going to lose. So you have to look at this like you're going at it, fighting, like you're fighting up against something as you named, Gerry, and see that as every good fight, it has to have a strategy. And so, and I'm not saying you should come from a fight mentality, but I'm saying that you have to do it in a way in which that you're being thoughtful and you're thinking about, what if it doesn't go right this way? What is our next step? And so I think that's so critical. Collaboration, strategy, and then plan.
That's really good. Rodney, and we have quite a few questions coming in.
No, I'm good. I've got Monroe and Merary nailed it.
So here's one that I think this was for Merary, but it could be for anyone. That they've basically started a group within their organization from diverse backgrounds to begin, and they thought that they've called out that the education on history is vital. So before you can talk about making change, you got to understand the history, and that they watched the Netflix film 13, which really kind of helped them. So their question is, what other resources do you have? What other books or videos or documentaries do you think that would be really good to help people advance their agendas on this?
Monroe probably has more documentaries than I do, but I would say there are tons of resources out there, and some that I leverage. I could tell you, CEO Action. There's a whole bunch of videos and even just toolkits and things that you can use within your groups and within the organization. I would also say Hive Learning. That's another one that I use. I'm just throwing some that I use, but those are the things. There are definitely free tools out there that you can leverage. Yeah. But I'm going to put you on the spot, Dr. Monroe, because I think you got this one.
So I just put in the chat feature. Yep, I just put in our anti-racism resource list, and I think it has a plethora of videos, articles, books that will provide you with a long list rather than me going through and itemizing, which they will never do justice. And so I would say start there. And then from there, you can see then what I suggest always is then what's the reference list? Where are the citations? And then that builds out from there. And so so you start there with that list, look at the references and the citations, and it just keeps building your resources. And the last thing I would say, if you're talking about practicing solidarity or being an anti-racist as a white person or someone from a power-based group, don't ask the black person that just unless this is the work they do, what should I read? What should I be doing? Google exists for a reason. And so there's so many resources there. And so anyway, I helped you with the first step, but then also Google's a real thing.
So that's good.
If I could, Gerry, if I could jump in, I'm certainly not going to do the justice that Dr. France did to it, but look at organizations as well, right? If you've got a diverse group of people, a shameless plug here, join SHFM if you're in this space, or join an organization around diversity and inclusion. Throw your pitch in, Gerry. Join an organization because they're going to have access to resources and like-minded people and documentaries and books and the whole range of source materials that you can use to educate yourself. And it's going to be geared to your particular organization. So at some point, you're going to have to devote some resources to it, some money, some time, and some talent. And so in order to do that and get the buy-in, you'll make the business case much easier if it is tied to your particular business industry.
So you said two things, right, really important. Yes, MFHA is a resource for that. What we're trying to do is to take the information that we learned from PepsiCo and from NYU and others and say, there's a lot of stuff out there. Let us be the clearinghouse kind of help organize it and say, here's some things that we know work in food service. Here's some things we know work in these environments. Here's some examples of what we've done. So you talked, Merary, about the Black experience. I can tell you, McDonald's has been teaching Black career development for over 25 years. They just recently relaunched it, and I attended it. It is Dr. Brown, I've known for years. It is fabulous, and it's slightly different in that they teach Black leaders teach to other Black employees. This is the stuff you have to know. This is the stuff that comes with us being Black or us being Latino, because they have Latino career development, and that we bring our own baggage in the room. Sometimes we have our own issues that are preventing us from moving forward. But then there are things that you have to learn to navigate within the organization that exist for everyone. This ain't a Black thing or a brown thing. This is a corporate thing. So I think that's important. The other element that you said, looking at other companies who do good work, that's why we want to, that is just follow the leaders without any doubt there. So let's go on. We have time for a few more questions. If our company wants to make a change and I have allies, what's the strategy example? So you've got people in your organization. Is there a strategy basics, any of the basics on developing strategy that they could follow? And that's for anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to your point around sort of the benchmarking of case examples where you see other corporations that have done well, and it doesn't mean that they're going to be holistically all perfect, right? But what is one thing you can learn from them that they've taken the right step forward, and don't just focus on that one, like, entity or that one hospitality space. It's sort of for us, and then sometimes it's like, again, asking like your workers or asking the people you serve, what do you need that we can do differently? What would your suggestions be? So that open to learning and open yourself up for feedback, for that feedback loop, I think it's so critical. And I think that's the thing that makes a difference to me.
Actually, a lot of companies post their plan right on their website.
Yes.
I shamelessly steal.
Yes.
They post it there. Why not take it, borrow it, learn from what they've done, and talk to others.
The only thing that I would add, just to say, number one, thank you to Dr. France for saying that, because I speak to a lot of other organizations, and the first thing that I tell them is, just because we're doing this doesn't mean that's where you should start. We've been at this for many, many years. So I love the fact that it's ask your employees, what is the need that we have right now? Because if you go and create this beautiful strategy, but it doesn't address the need of what's really happening in the organization, then you just set yourself back that much more.
Yes, we will share our notes. We will summarize this. I've summarized this whole thing to make sure we get it to everyone. That was one question. Second one is back to you, Monroe. Said you played a vital role in the dining services team in introducing a variety of foods and diversifying menus on campus. Can you please explain why this is so important to our student body and the impact?
Well, I mean, one, for the hospitality industry, it's a huge, and especially for food service, dining service is one of the biggest, like your biggest clients, right, of course, customers. So that's one, that's why it's important. They will, as we all know, in this age, they will let us know. And if you're not responsive to their first questions, then social media and the news and all those things are ready, willing to provide them a platform to organize and to express their interests. As you said, Gerry, earlier, that, our generation, our millennials are full-grown people in the workforce, so they are way out in the workforce. Then you have your Generation Z's and the one following. They know the importance of their voice, and so they're willing to make their voices heard. And the other thing that we did as a strategy is that we made it a collaborative effort. So my area, the global inclusion area, we worked very closely with our dining services, and we've changed hands over, but even formally, is that now we'd not just be to be responsive to an issue that comes up, but now we're being proactive, right? And so we have like different themes, like menus. We are working together across programming, like we're bringing speakers like in chefs from different backgrounds. So you think about the supplier diversity. So we're really seeing it as comprehensive, right? And so not just one way, but a multi-pronged approach that's done collaboratively.
That's really good. This question is for all of you. An anonymous attendee says, this is all good and well, but if we're here next year and there's been no significant change in all the areas and facets of SHFM in the organization, then what? that speaks to what are you doing at your companies? What are we doing as supporters of SHFM? What are we going to do to make sure that next year we're not sitting here talking about the same old stuff? So what's the goals and objectives that we should be having for next year? I mean, how are you going to make sure that PepsiCo's made progress? And Rodney, how about Compass? How are you going to know a year from now, we said we were going to do this, this is where we are now? Anyone?
So I have two things. One, I think any organization can make progress, but that's not good enough. And I think Rodney said it earlier, it's going to take all of us. We're a big company, so do we have scorecards? Do we have measurements? We're going to get done what we said we would get done because we have amazing employees that will make it happen and will hold us accountable. But that is not going to be enough. This is something that we each have to take on personally. And one of the things that we're doing is to build the community, right? Is whether it's education, we're going to be affording, 400 Black students the need paid education, but it's how do we still, as individuals, help our people rise from the environment and the social economic issues that are all around us. That's going to take every single one person. It's going to take every company. We're not going to be able to do it alone.
Quickly, because our time is running short. What are you going to do to make sure that we're not spinning our wheels in a year from now? We've got something done.
Well, I think a couple of things, and I don't mean to be flippant, but I do think a year from now, we're still going to be having this conversation. It's not, we didn't get here in a year. We're not going to get out of it in a year.
Right.
And so I think we're going to continue talking. I know that I'm going to draw upon the people that I've shared this dais with for some ideas and some thoughts moving forward. I'm going to be more active in both your organizations to learn more and to do more. So those are the kinds of things that we will do. We will have some gains and we will have some setbacks. I think that the hope is that there'll be 2 or 3 steps forward and 1 step backward versus the opposite, right? But we will still be having this conversation a year from now because the world won't magically be better a year from now. And I know that's not what the question was asking.
And that's okay. It's our panel. We have to do the best we can.
That's right.
Monroe, you get the last word because our time is running out. What would you leave this audience with as a word for wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this moment we need to all think about where can we have the greatest impact, and that's where we start the work, right? So I think that as a corporation, I think that as individuals, both, and so and then start doing the work. I mean, that's how we're going to be changed in a year from now. It's not going to be just like some of us have been at this for 400 years. I mean, I haven't, but in terms of the fact that we're not going to 400 years just because some people woke up to racism, it's going to be suddenly overnight can be changed, right? And so I think we just see where we can have impact and then start doing the work.
Yeah. Well, MFHA is going to focus on strategy, a strategy that will work for us, that we think could work for the industry. The other thing is, Merary referred to it, the CEO Pledge for Diversity and Inclusion. I think we have about 6 restaurant companies. I'm committed to getting to 100 restaurant companies signed up for the Pledge for Diversity. Now, how long it's going to take me, I don't know, but all of you can help me go to the website and sign up. So Bob, I'm going to turn it back over to you. The panel did a great job. I'm excited about having been part of it, and I want to thank you and all for having us here.
Thank you. Thank you. And first of all, Gerry, Merary, Rodney, Monroe, thank you. A heartfelt thank you for such an impactful session. So really fantastic. And I got to tell you, a word that I continually heard today was tired, right? It's interesting that that's a common term. Not what I expected, but I could see why it's the feeling. Tired of seeing the same scenarios. Tired of hearing the rhetoric without seeing change. Tired of having to be concerned every time you leave your home. At American Express, we say this time must be different. So my personal hope is that with the information received today, we're adding tools to everybody to help you make a difference in the communities you serve. So while that certainly means your local communities, I'm also considering the communities, the industries we support. So when we talk about paying it forward, this is what it's all about. And I just want to remind you of something that Rodney said and a theme that came through. It's all of our jobs. To make a change, it's all of our jobs. Following today's event, you're going to receive a conference evaluation via email. Please take a couple of moments to complete this very important survey. And before we sign off, I do want to remind everybody about the upcoming Conversations That Matter session. Save the date for the 3rd installment on Thursday, September 24th. And thanks again. We look forward to seeing everybody. We really appreciate you joining us, and we hope you had a good bit of information to take back to make the change in your local areas. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.